Most, hardcore strength coaches and therapists and trainers will tell you most athletes are underprepared and underloaded coming back from injury. Hope is a bad strategy. I'm not involved with anything that has to do with hope. I want to make sure I can gauge what we're doing going forward.
Our modern strength and conditioning coach should be able to manage, delegate, adapt, have a growth mindset, be effective in communication, have administrative skills, and follow a budget. They should have a degree in exercise, compete as an athlete, and have real experience.
We have to be skilled in technology and teaching technique, but I want to bring us back to talking about people.
The overwhelming majority of associate athletic directors, they don't know what we do. They don't know what the performance unit does. And I think that's really critical to understand because they're overseeing the reason why we have an athletic department. Every single athlete, you'd think there'd be some pinpoint focus on that.
Thank you for all that. I know this won't be the last time we're going to be talking to you about this kind of stuff. So we will be, we'll definitely keep in touch and grateful for you to join us today. But I'm going to pivot now to your good friend. I'm going to take us back to 2015. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm with Indiana basketball. We're in the NCAA tournament, and we're the 10 seed. So our hotel it's way on the outskirts of town, and it's nowhere near Kansas's hotel. So I didn't get a chance to meet anybody there, but we did share a locker room with Kansas for the open practice round, for the media practice. And we're walking in, and Coach Self walks out, and right behind him is Coach Hudy. And we looked at each other and we gave each other that, like, I know you're the strength coach, so I'm just going to give you that nod, what's up kind of thing. And then you just keep walking. And that's my personal story with Coach Hudy. And I've admired from afar, but I haven't get to know her. But I hope to more after being on the show today. So I thank you for coming on. But I wanted to reach out to people that knew Coach. And so I have Janae Jackson, who was one of my mentors and helped shape the way I carry myself as a coach. He had this to say about Coach Hudy. Said, Andrea Hudy is one of the most innovative coaches in the game today. She has the ability to get the most out of each and every athlete in her program, truly one of the best. And then I went to someone that was recently on the show, Dan McKim. He's a world record Highland Games athlete and former guest on our show. And he said, honestly, she is one of the coolest, most down-to-earth folks in the industry. She analyzed me leading up to one of my last years of competing. After we tweaked a few things in my deficiencies in my body, I threw 2 new personal bests that season. Always loved talking shop with her. And lastly, our head volleyball coach here at Indiana, Coach Steve Aird, has gotten to know her pretty well. And he said, I am really lucky to know Hudy. She is a true professional and a fantastic human being. She was a trailblazer in so many ways and worked so hard to achieve greatness. I know so many that have become a better version of themselves because of her, and that's including me. So myself, as well as the Indiana Strength staff, we're grateful to have you. And Coach Hudy, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you for the wonderful introduction. I don't feel like I deserve that, but thank you. And I wanted to thank you guys at Indiana University Strength for putting this on. It's such a great event, and to follow Coach Alejo and then to come before Coach Morton, it's a pretty cool privilege. So thank you guys for having me. And Coach Alejo's, his presentation kind of led into, let me see here if I can share my screen.
Maybe advance.
It's not letting me share.
There we go.
There we go. All right, so sorry about that. So Coach Alejo's presentation then can lead into what I wanted to talk about today, which is the end of periodization right in front of us. And the fact that you have to take these people or these athletes and look at them as individuals and understand where they're coming from competition, injury, all these different things. We have to look at the individual and see how the individual responds to competition and training, injury, and all these things. So, and instead of periodizing anymore, we adapt to each individual based on the technology that we have. So our goal with training these athletes for team sports is to create the healthiest. And with that, they're resilient and robust, but then also the most consistent athlete on a day-to-day basis. I think each one of us on this call has probably dealt with athletes, probably more often than not, that actually are different every day. So how can we, as coaches, help them to be the most consistent power producing or force producing athlete on a day-to-day basis with positive results? So again, the two goals are, can we create healthy and can we create consistent? And the best ability an athlete could have is availability, because I know the worst athletes that we have are probably the injured ones because they create a lot of other issues. So with that, we were talking earlier before the call that how do we do that? And you have to have a great culture in the weight room with what Coach was saying, with constant communication, developing relationships. But since 2012, I've been fortunate enough to work with some data or technology to collect data in the weight room that drives a lot of our programming, whether we change it daily, weekly, monthly. But my argument is then periodization is dead if we're treating these people as individuals, because we can't just program like we used to under all these European research things and what has been going on with traditional linear periodization. We can't treat it as one major competition anymore. Now we have 35 on average. Let's just use basketball, for example, and we're competing 2 to 3 times a week. So I don't know if we can use this periodization or linear periodization model anymore. I don't think I've used linear periodization since 2004. So I'm finally catching up with myself saying that it's almost dead. So not to take away from what's going on in the labs and whatnot, because I do believe in the research and what's coming out, but how can we apply it to real life? So the science and old linear periodization models or linear periodization models were based on the resistance training being their sport. So how can we bridge the gap to resistance training used to increase the health and performance of our athletes? Can we optimize power on a daily basis and do it consistently? Can we flatten the asymmetries, not just left versus right? I think left versus right anymore, I don't even think about that anymore. Thinking about other asymmetries that we have to deal with, and can we decrease the opportunity of injury? All this coming from the fact that I was an injured athlete, and it's miserable when you're hurt, and you're hurt all the time. So where do we start? So can we start with these linear periodization principles and guide it to a flexible nonlinear, or do we even plan for it anymore? Because the reality of it is that we answer to our sport coaches, for the most part. We have to win to keep our jobs. So there's constant changes going on with academics, personal life, the intensity of practice, whether the game went into overtime, however many minutes you played, were you hurt? So this was 2002, I think, 2002 or 3. This was a graph that I gave to Dr. Kramer when he was down the hall at the University of Connecticut, where the first part of the graph there, the first 63 days approximately, they're nonlinear planned. So we were hitting the spectrum of strength on the force load or the load velocity curve every day during the week. So then right there about day 64, we went into flexible nonlinear periodization, where we just adapted to what I was given from the athletes on the court. So you can see how the variability of that graph changes as soon as competition starts. So that was back in, I think it was 2002 or 2004 with Doc Kramer. So anymore though, our training is testing because we consider the weight room part of our practice culture now. So when we do have the athletes in the weight room, which is every day, it's part of our practice culture, we use Sparta Sport Science to look at movement sequencing, measurements of force in a vertical jump. We use Elite Form for velocity, power, and work, and then we use Catapult as a guide for practice. So we're constantly collecting all of this information, and okay, well, what do we use? Because there's a ton of information. We get the objective feedback from the technology. We use subjective feedback from our athletes, but our lagging KPIs, which drives everything, is health and performance. But our leading ones are rate of force development, average concentric output, impulse. We're looking at power, velocity, and work. So this is an example of what we did with Dr. Fry at Kansas, where this was a team. So year one, this was our squat test. We trained across the continuum. We went, just for example, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of their squat max. And we graphed it on a force velocity curve. And then year two, we actually pushed that force velocity curve up and to the right. That B graph shows that power output increased from about 550 to over 600. What was impressive about this, I think, and the results that we had were that these were both guards and bigs. So it wasn't just the guards getting better, it was everybody was getting better. So these were team averages that we used for this flexible nonlinear, but it also covered that whole load spectrum. So having the weight room as part of our practice culture has really been advantageous for us increasing power output and creating the health of our athletes. Because again, we can't determine what direction practice heads. We can't determine the intensity or the minutes or the volume of competition sometimes. Injuries come up, and academics, readiness is best when classes aren't in session, is what we've found. So let's see. So when we look at some asymmetries, we're not just, I put left and right out there on the right, and we have to look at, okay, eccentric versus concentric. What type of athlete are we working with, and what can we do to make them healthier? Do we have to slow things down? We found with Dr. Fry that upper body mass really took away from power output with our basketball players as compared to lower body mass. So that was an asymmetry that we found. And then some athletes are stronger and some actually move better when they're moving faster. So can we eliminate a lot of asymmetries that we find in each individual athlete? So I agree with Coach Alejo in that our modern strength and conditioning coach, right, should be able to manage, delegate, adapt, grow, or have a growth mindset, be effective in communication, have administrative skills, and follow a budget. They should have a degree in exercise, compete as an athlete, and have real experience. So a lot of our success is based on the fact of we have to have great interpersonal skills and really, you know, have the specific skills, but really work on our interpersonal skills for management. And that's all I have.
Coach, actually going off of that very last point that you said, at the last time I saw you, I think was in DC for one of those play conferences. And I remember sitting there with my my intern squad, and one of them had just given a presentation to our staff on you and was so nervous to meet you. And your compassion and grace and just being able to take the time to talk with her. I mean, that interpersonal skill, that's exactly it. So I thank you so much for your wisdom and just being so dynamic that you are in this field. Every time I hear you speak, I feel like you speak on something totally different. And so just the wealth of knowledge from different areas, I know I really appreciate. So thank you so much for that. I know that I can't tell you all how excited I am to